there exists a force that has the power to connect each and every one of us in this large auditorium. It can unite us in being something stronger together that we'd otherwise not be apart. It can help us forget our differences. It's also something that sadly is too often in short supply. And that force is community. And I'm somewhat of a professional community creator because I have helped build communities to solve regional problems, address health disparities, and give purpose to struggling teenagers. And yes, I've also built community by building a Hobbit hole. I built a Hobbit house and work from it that serves as sort of a home office. And I suppose I built this Hobbit house because a few years ago I was becoming increasingly discouraged watching communities across our country fail and fall apart. I'd worked with and watched communities face tragedy and disaster, and instead of pulling together, pull apart. It was from that discouragement that I decided I needed a break, do something different. So I did what any normal human being would do and built a Hobbit house. I call mine Spokane End, just like Bag End from the book The Hobbit. J.R.R. Tolkien's books have always been some of my favorite. It's small, as hobbits are small. And I call it Spokane End because our home sits on the boundary line for the city. I like to say it's where Spokane ends and imagination begins. It has a round red door that's just 5 feet in diameter. Inside are some of my favorite Tolkien books, a small couch, a little desk. Outside there's a little free library and a Hobbit-themed scavenger hunt. Because I like to think, and I believe that it's amazing how something so small and someone so small can make such a big difference. That's why there's a sign that hangs out front that also says, Spokane End. Remember, it was a hobbit, so very small, who did big things and saved them all. Spokane End has provided me with so many moments that have helped me answer one of the biggest questions of our age, perhaps the question of our age. It's a question at the heart of racism, inequality, much of our political discord, and more. And it's a question that each and every one of you must also answer. It's the question of whether or not we truly are better together. Is community worth it? And we do have a choice these days, don't we? With texting, the internet, Uber Eats, we can go days, weeks, months without ever truly connecting with another human being or even having to put on pants. Spokane End was to be a small place for me to occasionally take refuge from a very big world. But just as Bilbo Baggins wasn't expecting to have his home invaded by a wizard and 13 dwarves, it's brought a very big world right to my doorstep. People stop by to see it almost every day. It turns out that people are mostly unavoidable. But how we choose to treat one another and connect is entirely within our control. Now, community used to be something that I didn't think I could ever be a part of, let alone help create. Because when I was 9 years old, as a boy, I volunteered to help put away kickboards after swimming lessons. So I was the last one into the changing room, but I wasn't alone. A stranger waited there. That stranger took me and raped me and then left me alone in a local park. I spent too many years broken and afraid of most people because of that one person. And it is fear that is the leading driver of our disconnection. It's fear that prevents us from truly participating in community. We're afraid that someone might make us uncomfortable, or worse, vulnerable. We're afraid that someone might proclaim that Harry Potter is the best fiction series of all time. When, come on, we know it's Lord of the Rings. We're afraid we might get hurt. Fear robs us of so many precious and magical moments of connection and is a destroyer of communities. The resulting lack of community has devastating results. I was 18 when I finally tracked down the person who had hurt me, and I discovered that I sadly hadn't been the only one. I was terrified but determined when I showed up at his door to confront him. I expected a monster to be waiting on the other side. I knocked. That door opened. Standing in front of me was a monster, but not a terrifying one. In fact, over the conversations that followed, I realized he was a very broken individual. There is no excuse for what he did to myself or others, but he had been broken and disconnected from any resemblance of a community for most of his life. He was finally in prison thanks to a concerned community that didn't give up. I had to face the pain and the fear of one person to succeed in building community with other people. Spokane End has played a small but important role in building community in my neck of the woods. Without even realizing it, a little Hobbit house provided 3 important ingredients for building community: an invitation, an action, and a spark. It provided an invitation for neighbors to finally meet. It provided an action, the building of a Hobbit house, for people to talk about, visit, and enjoy. Actions which can be stronger than words, which too often are empty and weak. And finally, it provided a little spark of inspiration from it being the unexpected. Let me share with you 3 more examples about how these key ingredients can help us create community. For work in 2016, I was in Seattle, downtown, when I came across a ping pong table and a stranger, a 9-year-old boy named Tyrone, who invited me to play. Over the course of that ping pong game, we got to know one another. He made fun of how bad I was at ping pong, but we parted as friends. And that gave me the inspiration to come back to my community and start a project, Spokane Sidewalk Games, where we place games in public spaces around our town while inviting people to play and while employing youth facing homelessness. Our goal is to provide a public invitation for people to connect through our games. In fact, our slogan is, "A community who play together, stay together." And 4 years later, over 145,000 people have connected through play because we invited them to do so. Now for work, I lead an organization, Priority Spokane, that brings together diverse businesses, tribes, government, hospitals, foundations, schools, to collectively take action together to address some of the biggest threats facing our region. Together, their actions have increased high school graduation rates, reduced homelessness. And through their actions, they have built relationships and trust that couldn't have been accomplished through just words. Actions taken together are the foundation on which healthy communities are built. Lastly, community requires a spark. And I define a spark as a positive push for a community to form healthy connections versus harmful ones. A spark has to be given authentically and unselfishly to truly inspire a community to be better together. The Hobbit house has been a gift that my husband and I have freely shared. And it's provided a little spark for our neck of the woods. It was 1 year ago today that we thought we would invite the public to come trick-or-treat at Spokane End while we held a book drive for kids in foster care. I thought maybe 100 people would show up. Boy, was I wrong. Several thousand people descended upon our quiet little neighborhood. I was one very stressed out hobbit. Until I saw neighbors helping to direct traffic, friends putting on costumes to entertain people in a line that stretched for blocks, and thousands of people donating so many books and connecting without incident because of the spark generated by a tiny little hobbit house. Building a hobbit house has been part of my journey, but I choose to invite others to join me in that trek. So what spark, what action, what invitation can you provide to build community among those around you? And who can you include who's different from you? Because Tolkien's Fellowship of the Ring wouldn't have succeeded if it had been just hobbits. So I have answered that big question of whether or not we are better together. And I continue to answer it every single day, as must each and every one of you. I have reasons to back away just as many of you do. I know that sometimes communities can cause pain and can fail just as people do. But this is what I believe. I believe that neither failure nor pain are reasons to retreat. Instead, they are opportunities to learn, to grow, and respond stronger together than ever before. So my challenge to you is this today. Join me in being community creators, because there are a growing number of dragons and evil rings in this world that need defeated. And the odds are much better if we do it together. You don't have to build a hobbit house, as totally cool as that can be. But it does require that you choose connection over fear, and that you extend an invitation, that you take a small action or two, and that you give the gift of that spark to help us truly be better together. Thank you.